All right, everybody. How are we all doing? So first, where were you a year ago today? I bet you remember exactly where you were. A year ago today, Donald Trump was in Butler, Pennsylvania. A year ago today, our republic was probably saved by just a couple of centimeters. A year ago today, by the grace of God and a turn of the head tilt, a bullet whizzed by Donald Trump's face and barely scraped his ear. And as we're closing out this conference, I think we just need to just remember how far our nation has come in the span of 1 year, of how much has changed. And thanks to the goodness and glory of God, that Donald Trump turned his head at that very moment. I'll never forget where I was with my daughter. All of a sudden, I saw we were in some workout area, and all of a sudden on screen, Donald Trump shot. You all remember where you were when you first heard the news. And then what a sigh of relief when we saw him rise up and he said, fight, fight, fight. 1 year ago to this day. But the reason I wanted to start with this is that we also lost one of our own patriots that day, Corey Compatore. And we should just do a moment of silence for 10 seconds to remember Corey Compatore that lost his life a year ago today. Thank you. And I know that so many of you have been to MAGA rallies. He died a hero's death. He put his body in the way and saved his daughter's lives that they may live. For the men out there, that is the best of MAGA masculinity. And Corey, we remember you today here in Tampa, Florida. Our last bit of programming here is going to be a debate. As many of you guys know, I speak a lot about this on college campuses. I get so many questions about this topic on college campuses. Some of my best memories ever have been going to Israel, traveling to Israel, seeing where Jesus rose from the dead. Jesus walked on water, spoke in the Garden of Gethsemane, gave the sermon, Mount Beatitudes, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in Hebron. And some of my greatest experiences have been in the Holy Land and defending Israel. But as you know, this is a very hot topic on campus, and increasingly a hot topic in conservative circles. And I thought, hey, let's lean into that disagreement. Let's lean into that debate. Let's have two people that don't agree on this topic that are some of the best defenders of the position when it comes to Israel, when it comes to the 12-day war, when it comes to whether or not we should be supporting or sending aid to Israel. Because we as conservatives, we want to have this debate. We don't want to just all of a sudden say, oh, you're not allowed to say that. No, we want to foster an environment where we get to the truth. We want to find the best ideas and have the best ideas win. And so we are thrilled to have two men, and they know what they're talking about. I'm going to be moderating this. We're going to make sure that this remains mostly peaceful. So give it up for Josh Hammer and Dave Smith, everybody. So Josh and Dave, welcome to Turning Point USA. Welcome to Tampa. And give it up for both these men again. So we have a clock here. We can blow through that if this is going well and respectful and spirited. I first wanted to start by introducing both these men. Josh Hammer, Newsweek, Josh Hammer Show. Josh is a very passionate and eloquent defender of Israel, and also is a great friend and someone that we talk about a lot of other issues as well. So Josh, welcome. Great to have you.
Great to be here, Charlie.
Also, Dave Smith. Dave is comedian. A lot of fans of yours here in the audience, Dave. And also a libertarian. And we're not going to talk much about that. But we were talking about how much we agreed backstage on certain things. And Dave, means a lot that you made work here. You took a awful flight to get here from halfway across the country. And so, Dave, you could plug your stuff as well, because I don't know the name of your show and stuff. But I want to start with this. I want to start with opening statements, if you will. There are three big things that I want to cover. And we just did a focus group with some of our students here earlier. The three big things we want to cover. We want to cover the 12-day war between Israel and Iran. What do we think of that? Good, bad? How did Trump handle it? Number two, we want to talk about the appeared, the fake, or the real amount of Israeli influence in American politics, from AIPAC to how congressmen are involved, and kind of have our discussion debate. And then finally, it's one thing to be against stuff, everybody. You can always, I don't like this, I don't like that. I want both of these men to present what their solution is, their proposition of what they are proposing. So with that, though, Dave, I thought it would be helpful. This is your first Turning Point event. Some people aren't familiar with your work. Introduce yourself, make an introductory statement, and the floor is yours, my friend.
Oh, well, thank you very much, and thank you guys for having me. As Charlie mentioned, I took a flight here, so I'm going on no sleep, so if Josh wins, it doesn't count. But I'm a stand-up comedian, and I'm also a libertarian. I'm really a follower of the greatest congressman who's ever lived, who is Dr. Ron Paul, who is turning 90. As far as, look, I would say I think that American foreign policy for my entire life has been insane, and like criminally insane. We've launched war after war. We've talked about peace through strength the whole time, but all we've gotten is permanent militarism and forever wars against countries that pose no threat to us. And a huge part of the reason why we've embarked on this is because the neoconservatives hijacked our foreign policy, and they were in power after 9/11. And the neoconservatives, as everybody who's followed it knows, were joined at the hip with the Likud party. That's just a fact. They all admit it in their own words. And you can go back and you can read the Clean Break memo. You can read the companion piece, Coping with Crumbling States. This was written by David Wormser and Richard Pearl. And they laid out their plan. Now, their plan was that to help Israel, the clean break is a break from the peace process, a break from Oslo, which was designed to give the Palestinians their own state. And these neoconservative geniuses decided that instead of the Israelis making peace with the Palestinians, they could just have the U.S. overthrow all of the surrounding governments that were giving Israel a hard time. And this is where four-star general Wesley Clark says that he saw the plans right after 9/11 to overthrow 7 countries in the next 5 years. And what was the last country on that list? It was Iran. Okay? This is a big part of what the whole conflict is about. Now, the neoconservative has kind of become like a pejorative for war hawks these days, and don't get me wrong, I support that. Keep calling them neocons. But the actual neoconservatives, the self-identified neoconservatives, aren't really in power anymore. But Benjamin Netanyahu is still in power in Israel, and the Likud party is still pushing for this. Now, I want, very quickly, I'll try to not go too long here. Okay. They actually did focus group testing back in the 90s before the first Gulf War in Iraq. And Americans weren't really moved by, we have to reinstall the king of Kuwait, but they were moved by the nuclear threat. Now, if you go read Coping with Crumbling States or the Clean Break memo, in the 90s when the neocons admitted they wanted to overthrow Saddam Hussein, they never said it was because he had nuclear weapons. They said he was a problem for Israel in the region. They only made up that lie after 9/11 because they knew that's what would sell you, or maybe not you, you're too young, but sell your moms and dads on going and fighting this war. And by the way, when they talked about wanting to overthrow Iran, it was the same thing. Never had nothing to do with a nuclear threat. That's just the thing they use now as the excuse. So yes, there is tremendous influence by Israel in our government. That doesn't mean I'm subscribing to some crazy conspiracy or telling you to hate Jewish people. I'm Jewish. I'm just saying they have influence. They've used it in a very negative way, and we should reject this insane foreign policy and embrace the foreign policy that Dr. Ron Paul advocated, which is the foreign policy of the founding fathers. Stay out of entangling alliances, stay out of unnecessary wars, be friends with the world, and trade with the world. That's the key to prosperity.
Thank you, Dave. Josh, opening statement, feel free to respond, and then we'll proceed as we go. So that was about 3.5, 4 minutes, so same amount of time.
All right, so it's really great to be here. Thank you, Charlie, for having me. Thank you, Turning Point, for having me back. It's really wonderful to be at this amazing conference. You know, Dave joked that he didn't get any sleep last night. Today's actually also a fast day on the Jewish calendar. I'm not eating or even drinking water, so we're all on the same page here. We're all just totally screwed. So you can kind of get off the same starting place there. Look, there's a lot of substance to respond to. I'll just really briefly do that, and then we'll talk about what I actually want to talk about in my opening remarks. Dave mentioned this alleged coordination between the neoconservatives, which I presume he means Bush-era foreign policy, and the Likud party. I presume half of you probably don't even know what the Likud party is. It's referring to the Israeli right. It's very instructive, and Dave always conveniently neglects to inform the audience of this, that the actual leader of the Israeli right back in 2002, a man by the name of Ariel Sharon, vehemently opposed the Bush administration going into Iraq. So this whole notion that Israel is talking America into foreign wars is total nonsense. Actually, in 2011, when the Obama administration toppled Muammar Gaddafi in Libya, it's actually well known that Libya actually sent secret diplomatic envoys to Israel, trying to tell them to then talk to the United States and France to talk NATO off of that attack there. So this whole narrative is totally backwards there. But I want to kind of dumb things down a little bit here. I see a lot of people wearing 47 hats. I voted for President Trump multiple times. I love our president. You guys love our president, right? You love President Trump? Okay. This is Turning Point freaking USA. Charlie, God bless you. You have built the largest MAGA grassroots army in the country. Seriously, my friend, you deserve this. You all are card-carrying members of it. We here are part of that. The good news is that while no one should be afraid of debate, and this debate is a nice thing here, the MAGA movement is actually quite unified. Believe it or not, all the talk to the contrary when it comes to these issues. An overwhelming majority of self-identified MAGA Republicans support close U.S.-Israel relations. According to a CBS News poll, moreover, after the recent Operation Midnight Hammer B-2 bombers in Iran, 94% of self-identified MAGA Republicans supported President Trump's dropping those B-2 bombs on Fordo, Natanz, and the other Iranian facilities there. This is a wildly popular policy there. What did Dave Smith say about this? He re-upped his now years-long crusade to call for Donald Trump's impeachment. Y'all probably don't know that about Dave Smith, do you? He's now called for Donald Trump to be impeached multiple times. But Dave, you know, look, I mean, I don't like when people misquote me either. You probably don't like when people misquote you. So I actually have a little bit of a highlight reel here of Dave Smith's tweets over the years. Dave Smith, March 19th, 2024. Donald Trump is responsible for around 500,000 deaths in Yemen, and between the weapons to Ukraine and the Abraham Accords Jerusalem embassy, he is at least partially responsible for the two worst humanitarian crises in the world. He's a war criminal who should spend his life in prison. He is calling Donald Trump a war criminal who should spend his life in prison. You should be livid at that. I am livid at that as a Trump supporter. Donald Trump, Dave Smith, June 16, 2025. Trump allegedly had full prior knowledge of Israel's attacks and gave it his blessing while pretending to be negotiating with the Iranians as a cover. If this is true, Trump is the most impotent bitch of a leader imaginable. He's calling our president, the greatest president in my lifetime, an impotent bitch. Are you kidding me? June 21st, 2025, Donald Trump has now launched an illegal war of aggression against Iran. The risk of an absolute catastrophe is very high, and the benefits are non-existent. Dave Smith, June 21st. Dead wrong. This notion that World War III would start, not a single American casualty. We should be celebrating that. Donald Trump fulfilled multiple campaign promises. The escalator speech in 2015 at Trump Tower, he literally said, I'm not going to let Iran get a nuclear weapon. And guess what? He said, I oppose a neoconservative foreign policy. He did both of those things with Iran. He deprived the Iranian regime of nuclear weapon while not losing a single American sailor, soldier, or Marine, while depriving them of nuclear weapons. And finally, Charlie, I'll end on this. Dave Smith, July 8th, 2025. In the last month, Donald Trump has launched a war of aggression on behalf of a foreign government, exploded the debt, announced that he's continuing the Biden policy of arming Ukraine, and covered up a giant child rape operation. So according to my interlocutor, Donald Trump is not just engaging in wars on behalf of a foreign government, he is also covering up the world's giant pedophilic child sex trafficking ring, allegedly, I presume, on behalf of a foreign government as well. So I'm disgusted, frankly, that this man is on stage, but I'll end it at that.
Okay, well, got it. So you can see peace is hard. I'm trying to keep the peace. Now, Dave, I want to give you an opportunity, about 4 minutes to respond to that. But also, I do want to, now that we had the opening salvos and the Tomahawk missiles launched, let's respond as you see fit. No, and then bring us to the 12-day war. Because let's stay focused on that.
Yeah.
We can.
Well, the thing, Charlie,
but defend yourself.
Sure.
Obviously.
Well, the thing is, Charlie, as you may have noticed, and some of you may have seen some of my other debates. Every single time I come up here to debate issues, and they come up here to debate me and my character. It's all they have every single time because they can't actually take on any of the arguments. And so the most pathetic, low-hanging fruit of, you guys like Trump, this guy said bad things about Trump. Listen, guys, I'm a free American. I supported Donald Trump in this last election. Yes, he did just actively cover up a giant child rapist ring, and I'm going to criticize him for that, okay? And I'm sorry, after all these years of us right-wingers saying, protect the children, come on, that's bad for your soul if you don't. You speak up about that. It's horrible what he's doing. And, you know, as far as the actual substance of what Josh said here, which there really wasn't much, but I already pointed this out the last time we debated. His topic about how Sharon was against the war in Iraq is total nonsense. Sharon's envoy initially opposed it when he found out that Bush was going to invade Iraq, not because he didn't want Saddam Hussein to be overthrown, but because he wanted regime change in Iran first. And then, when the George W. Bush administration assured him that Iran would come next, they got on board with it and they started pumping out all types of propaganda about how Saddam Hussein's nuclear secret sites that didn't exist. And Benjamin Netanyahu, the longest serving prime minister in Israeli history, that year in 2002 came to Congress and testified under, a congressional testimony that anyone can go watch, and advocated not that the U.S. let Israel do it, but that the U.S. overthrow Saddam Hussein. I believe his words were, I guarantee that peace will spread through the region. And he also advocated that we overthrow Muammar Gaddafi and the mullahs in Iran. So you're just wrong about it. That's not true. And yes, have I been critical of Donald Trump when I think he gets things wrong? Yeah. I mean, I think that's what we should do. This is America. You criticize the government when they get things wrong. And so I don't even know what else.
Josh, wait 1 sec, Josh. I got to keep the peace here. Dave, about a minute-ish.
Okay.
A minute and a half. No, I'm taking the right time.
Look, as far as
take about a minute and a half and try to do the 12-day war thing.
Yeah, sure. As far as the 12-day war goes, I mean, look, I'll be honest. Donald Trump, it might be the greatest thing he's ever done in his life that at the end of the 12-day war, after the Iranian response was as weak as it was, and they gave us advanced warning, so there were no American casualties, he started pushing for a ceasefire. And that was great that he did that. But the point is that the war never needed to be launched to begin with. Iran did not have nuclear weapons. Iran, according to all of the intelligence, including our Director of National Intelligence, until a day after Israel bombed them and she changed her mind, go read the annual threat assessment from earlier this year. Iran had not made the political decision to acquire a nuclear weapon, and they were in negotiations with Donald Trump at the time to bring their enrichment down. There was just no need other than the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu wants that regime overthrown.
Josh, feel free to respond. Thank you.
I'd be curious if Dave Smith also believes in the tooth fairy and pink unicorns. I mean, what lie does Dave Smith not believe, frankly? Look, the recent 12-day war is literally the encapsulation of the Trump doctrine of foreign policy. Donald Trump ran against neoconservatism. He is not a neoconservative. That's good because neoconservatism is actually really, really bad. I actually have a whole chapter in my book, Israel and Civilization, talking about how bad neoconservatism is. It's chapter 7. If you haven't read it, you should go ahead and pick up a copy. So it's really good that Donald Trump opposes moralistic nation-building boondoggles. Guess what Donald Trump is also not and never has been since day one? He's never been a hardcore isolationist. He is a foreign policy nationalist and realist. We would say that he is a Jacksonian. He is in the mold of Andrew Jackson, one of his favorite presidents of all time, because he believes in generally following the very wise advice of George Washington in his farewell address that you should beware of foreign entanglements. But when you are attacked, you are going to punch back 3 times as hard. How many times has Trump said that in a debate there? When he's punched, he's going to punch back really, really, really hard. What happened in the 12-day war was you had a close ally, Israel, that through their wonderful control of the skies, and they're taking out the missile launchers and the IRGC command there, essentially paved a very clean runway through that, and they're neutralizing Hezbollah last year in 2024, that then allowed the United States to come in with the B-2 bombers and the death blow. It was a perfect alley-oop. For you basketball fans, it was kind of like Kobe Bryant tossing it to Shaquille O'Neal back in the way. It was a perfect tag team operation to neutralize and set back by many years the threat of a regime that, whether or not we care to admit it, has actually been at war with the United States at least since the 1983 Beirut, Lebanon, Hezbollah barracks bombings that slaughtered 241 Marines, arguably since the 1979 hostage crisis as well. Again, Donald Trump fulfilled multiple campaign promises. He set back the nuclear program. Not a single American soldier, sailor, or Marine died. It was a brilliant, brilliant move of statesmanship, a fantastical move. Frankly, it's a borderline Mount Rushmore worthy accomplishment, I would say.
So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to insert myself because I don't want us to talk past each other because these conversations have a tendency to do that. So I'm going to ask both of you a critical question that both of you guys already launched. Josh, to you first. Dave's contention, and Dave, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that the nuclear program was not a threat, correct? That it was a intel push. Would you even say that? I'm strong manning your argument, steel manning it. Josh, what do you have to say to that, to the veracity of the claim that there was an imminent threat of Iran getting a nuclear bomb? That is a core point of Dave's argument. Then, Dave, I'm going to throw back an equally difficult question for you. Josh.
Okay, so I profess agnosticism as to the imminent nature, Charlie, because I have not seen the reports. Neither have you, neither has Dave. Literally, no one in this room has actually seen the report. So I do not know literally what the exactly imminent nature of the threat was. It would be impossible for me to say. I'm not going to bullshit you and pretend like I know because I simply don't know. What I can say is the following. Iran has transparently and obviously been trying to acquire a nuclear weapon for 2.5, 3 decades. We know this for approximately 1 to 2 million different reasons. Among them that we can point to is that the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Administration, which is essentially the nuclear watchdog for the United Nations, they have been sounding the alarm about this, and they have said very loudly and clearly that Iran has blocked their inspectors from going to inspect their enriched uranium, and that they have concluded over recent years, especially including recent months, that Iran is enriching uranium at a much quicker rate and to a much higher percentage and rate of enrichment than any civilian program would ever justify. By the way, the notion that Iran even needs a civilian program in the first place, I think, is kind of bonkers. It's one of the most petroleum, oil, and gas-rich countries in the world, so that's kind of a bit of a red herring in and of itself. But we know from a million different international organizations that they have been doing this. And Charlie, more to the point, again, you know, Dave likes to say, oh, they just chant death to America, which they do. They literally chant it every single day in their Potemkin parliament. But they actually do act on it. They killed hundreds and hundreds of American soldiers on the roadside of Fallujah, Al-Anbar province during Iraq with Qasem Soleimani-supplied IEDs. They have killed Americans going back to the 241 Marines in Beirut, Lebanon. By the way, the Hezbollah jihadists who organized that operation to slaughter those Marines in Beirut, Lebanon in 1983 was a man by the name of Fuad Shakur. The U.S. State Department had a $5 million bounty on his head following the 1983 slaughter of the Marines there in Beirut. He went alive for 41 years. You know who killed him last year? The IDF. Israel took out this guy that the State Department had a $5 million bounty on for 41 years for killing 241 of our boys back in 1983 in Beirut.
So I'm going to now ask, a really tough follow-up for you. You do not want Iran to get a nuclear weapon. Bad. Would you, if it ever took, if it required U.S. troops on the ground, would that be worth Iran not getting a nuclear weapon?
Charlie, with respect, I reject the premise. I simply do not think it does, actually.
I know. It's a hypothetical, but it's worth thinking about. Okay. Dave, I got to ask you tough questions now. Okay?
Yeah, but I want to respond to some of this stuff, because all of that's wrong.
You will. Hold on. I don't want us to talk past each other, else we're going to spend all this time on prime ministers in 2002 that the audience doesn't know about.
No, but if he's making claims about like something that's just not true.
I want you to get to that. I want to just ask a very simple question. From your perspective, because I just asked the tough one to Josh, are you okay, or do you think we should do anything to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear bomb?
Anything, sure. Yeah, there's lots of things I think we should do.
Is military action ever justified?
Well, again, yes, there are times when military action is justified, but if you're saying what we could do to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, what we were doing, Donald Trump was in negotiations with them, and I think he should have continued those. And the truth is that the big problem with the JCPOA that Obama got us into was that there were sunset provisions. They opened up a whole new inspections regime. It is not true that the IAEA is saying that Iran was about to get a nuclear weapon. Anybody you want, it's published online. You can go read the conclusion of their last report where they explicitly said Iran does not have nuclear weapons and is not trying to develop them. They are enriching at 60%, and they were in negotiations to maybe bring that down. But, you know, when you bring up the fact of the Marines getting killed in 1983, it's actually an interesting, Ronald Reagan, who was president at the time, he wrote about this in his memoir. Now, if you know what Ronald Reagan did was he pulled out after that. He turned tail and run. And he said in his memoir, he said, I underestimated the irrationality of Middle Eastern politics, and we never should have gotten involved in that. Now, if you want to say that Iran backed them, okay, couple years after that, Charlie, there was a scandal in the Reagan administration. It was the something Contra, Iran-Contra. That's right. Ronald Reagan was selling weapons to the Iranians a couple years after this happened. So to come back now 40 plus years later and use that as the excuse why we got to go to war with Iran, I mean, just think about how crazy this is. And the stuff he said about the roadside bombs in Iraq is just not true. It's been debunked. It's more war propaganda that's been debunked. I highly recommend anyone can read the book Enough
Have you
Already.
spoken to a
Josh, 1 second.
I highly recommend people read the book Enough Already. It is the best book that's been written about the terror wars by Scott Horton. He has all the footnotes in there. You can go through it yourself. It's completely debunked. Those roadside bombs were built by Shiites in Iraq. Now, some of them did have relationships with Iran, but the majority of Iraq is Shiite. So yes, we invaded the next door country and we got into some fights with the Shiite groups there. But to say that's a reason why we now have to invade Iran or we have to bomb them or something, it just doesn't make any sense.
One or two really quick, Chris, follow-ups,
Sure.
and then we'll do this. Both sides need to get under good cross-examination. Do you think it would be bad if Iran got a nuclear bomb?
Yes, I think it's
good.
bad. I think it's bad.
And I think we can all agree on that. That is a moral agreement.
I don't think anybody should be allowed to have nuclear weapons secretly.
Right. And so,
how about that?
I will ask Josh about that, because that's a not-so-subtle dig at Israel. However,
hold on. Are you suggesting that Israel has nuclear weapons?
I don't know, actually. They probably do.
Yeah, you do.
I don't know the intelligence. I'm not that of DNI, but I mean, they probably do. But let me ask you, Dave. Now, another question. What is your, now, let's just say, criticism? No U.S. troops were killed. It required no U.S. troops on the ground. There was no war. It lasted 12 days. Fordo was pretty eliminated. I mean, even the Iranians say it. So looking at it now, 12 days later, what is your problem with what seems to be a masterclass in 12 days, in, out, no problem, no U.S. troops, and we've kind of moved on? What would your problem with that be?
You know, I think, and I do think there's something really sick and poisoning about this, is that our country has become so addicted to war that if we launch a war and you go, well, hey, it wasn't a complete catastrophe. I mean, 1 million people didn't die in this one like in Iraq, or hundreds of thousands didn't die in this one like in Afghanistan or Libya or Syria. It's like, okay, look, people died in this war, okay? There were both Iranian civilians and Israeli civilians who died in this war. It was a terrible thing for them and their families. This was a catastrophe. And my point is that the war never needed to be launched to begin with. But there's no reason why we even have to be enemies with Iran. They oppose this is a third world country in the Middle East that does not have nuclear weapons, does not have intercontinental ballistic missiles, does not have an air force capable of hitting us with anything. This is Israel's problem. We don't need to be involved in this. Sorry, we got our own issues here. And look, again, I'll give Donald Trump credit that, okay, it didn't turn into a catastrophe. He took the off-ramp when he had the chance. But look, a lot of that was out of Donald Trump's control. The risk of this war, like a lot of people love to, like Josh likes to read my tweets when I was saying this could turn into a catastrophe.
Because you were dead wrong. You look stupid.
Oh. Josh. Guys,
okay.
don't say...
Hold on. No.
Let's de-escalate the stupid stuff.
Actually, what Josh is saying is the lowest IQ argument that anyone can make. I was warning that there's a risk of a catastrophe, and he's saying you're stupid because there wasn't a catastrophe. This is on the level of playing Russian roulette, and if the bullet doesn't go off, you go, see, dummy, you were warning that could go bad. That doesn't prove anything. Listen, for all you guys, if you talking about how big and bad the Iranians are and what a scary threat they are, what if they hadn't given us advance notice? What if Iran was actually as suicidal as people like Josh pretend they are? And what if their response had killed a few hundred Americans in the region, which by all military assessments, they are capable of doing? What would Donald Trump have had to do then, Charlie? What would he have done?
I'm the moderator.
No. Okay, sorry.
Like, come on, Dave.
It was a rhetorical question.
I know, but both sides are getting tough questions here.
The point is, Donald Trump would have had to respond even harder.
How many would have, could have, are we going to have to? This is not living in reality.
Let's give Josh a chance to respond. But first,
it didn't happen. It's a counterfactual.
1 second.
If you hadn't have had breakfast this morning,
when people talk over each other, they don't like listening to that. So that's why I'm here. Josh, I want you to respond to that. But to Dave's point, do you think Israel has a secret nuclear program, and is that a problem?
Yeah, I think it's not particularly disputed that Israel has a nuclear program. We know exactly where it is based. This is not a particularly hidden thing there. I mean, it's so well known, in fact, Charlie, that I don't know exactly why it's officially a secret. Unofficially, it's not much of a secret. I'm non-Israeli. I have no idea why the exact policy is the way it is. I don't particularly have a program with it. As I said, it's one of the world's worst